Hello, Shirley here. This series is designed to tap into the experiences and wisdom of small, successful government contracting founders and CEOs. Through inspiration, determination, intelligence, and a little luck, they have and are currently managing and growing high-value businesses in the extraordinarily complex, highly regulated, but opportunity-rich federal marketplace. How do they do it? What are the keys to their success? What would they do differently given what they know now? What mistakes did they make along the way, and what advice would they give others? My guest today is Steve Edwards, founder of Edwards Performance Solutions, an enterprise management, training, IT services, and cybersecurity firm located in Columbia, Maryland. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Shirley. It's a pleasure to talk with you today.
The pleasure is all mine. Steve, we're going to be exploring your background and thoughts more thoroughly, but tell the audience a little about Edwards Performance Solutions.
Certainly. I founded Edwards Industries, now known as Edwards Performance Solutions, or just simply Edwards, in 1997. We support both government agencies and commercial businesses, as well as nonprofit organizations, in their operational approach to achieving their mission and strategic goals. Our foundation is in program and project management and training, but over the past 23 years, our solutions have also expanded to include IT services and a very proactive cybersecurity approach. Because in this day and age of technology, if you do not understand your cyber risks and security vulnerabilities as a government contractor, sadly, you may not have a project or even a business to manage. We pride ourselves in our people and the subject matter expertise they bring. With that said, we've worked hard to maintain and enhance our corporate culture. We've been ranked on the Inc. 5000 list 10 times now and recognized as a top workplace for 5 years by the Baltimore Sun. We strive to stand behind our core values. We've also been recognized for our community outreach efforts to include the Small Business Philanthropy Award from the Baltimore Business Journal and the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Governor's Service Award for Service and Volunteerism, which is a recognition I'm particularly proud of.
Well, congrats on your recognition, Steve. Well deserved. But, many companies pride themselves on their core values that are in their mission statements and on their websites. Yet they have not been recognized, and many struggle to institutionalize the behaviors they value. So I want to take you back to the beginning. Why did you start Edwards, and what did you do to ensure that you were building a company that you could be proud of?
So, for many years, I had a desire to start my own company. But I wanted to do more than just provide solutions and services based on my 20-plus years of industry experience. I wanted to provide a work environment that I had not experienced myself, an environment where employees felt empowered and recognized for their success and the success of the company, an environment where they were rewarded for the work they do and were able to grow their skills and expand their education as the company expanded its offerings. In short, I really wanted Edwards Performance Solutions to be the type of company where I'd want to be employed. This led me to establish a list of guiding principles or core values for the company that encompass both business ethics and employee empowerment. The success of any company hinges on trust and integrity. In addition to traditional business principles, I am also guided by my personal faith in the Lord. Secondly, we are a services-based company, so our employees are the reason we succeed. I always want to create an environment where employees are given the resources they need to succeed, which in turn will make Edwards the best place to work and the best place to do business with.
Steve, what was your initial plan, your vision for your company, and how did you ensure that employees would be given the resources that they need to succeed?
Well, when I started the business, I was more focused on systems engineering and program management. I have a degree in electrical engineering with a certificate in biomedical engineering technology. I worked as a clinical engineer at Johns Hopkins Hospital for about 9 years, then as a systems engineer and program manager at 2 different government contracting firms for about 11 to 12 years. My initial plan was to build a systems engineering company using structured project management discipline and transparency to set ourselves apart from our competition. At the time, I assumed other companies managed their programs and projects with the same level of discipline and rigor as I was taught by my former employer. But I quickly learned many companies do not practice good project management and were in desperate need for structured methodologies.
How did you recognize that good project management was not being practiced, and why did you think it was your job to fix that?
There were several instances early on where a government representative, commercial customer, or other stakeholder would commiserate over missed scheduled milestones, cost overruns, out-of-scope work, or even poor product quality. Although I was there to offer systems engineering support, I would be in these meetings and would listen and offer suggestions on how to resolve their frustration. The next thing I knew, I was providing support to the existing project manager, or in some cases running the project myself on behalf of the customer. All this was fine with me because I have a real passion for project management. Once I recognized this industry need, I shifted the focus of the company to provide program, project, and portfolio management solutions, services, and training. And to this day, these solutions provide the foundation or underpinning for all Edwards' services.
This is an example of how successful entrepreneurs listen, observe, and solve problems. They pivot based upon the real needs that they perceive. They are compelled to solve problems and serve their clients. They're like moths to a flame. So, Steve, what did you find to be surprisingly easy early on?
Surprisingly, business development and building an opportunity pipeline. I have always considered myself a bit of an introvert, especially when it comes to talking with strangers in large groups. But when it came to talking with my fellow engineers on technology projects, conversations came much easier than expected. So I guess you could consider me an engineering extrovert, which in the words of our folks in the intelligence community, a person who will stare at the shoes of the person standing next to them as opposed to their own.
I love it.
So I started my business with a lot of apprehension and concern when it came to social networking, but quickly found that others were interested in what I had to say.
And Steve, when you say social networking, back then you weren't talking about Facebook or Twitter, right?
They didn't exist.
Right. So why do you think people were interested in what you had to say? Have you ever analyzed that? There are a lot of highly skilled technical folks who have a lot to say, but can't carry a conversation. What do you do differently, and why did that come easily to you?
Well, it didn't come easily at first. I really had to force myself to get out there and network to meet people. But then I realized that most people out there in these networking venues were just like me. They were just as apprehensive and just as concerned about being there as I was. I also realized that it's not about selling myself. It was about being myself. So if you work on being yourself, you can begin to build a relationship. From a relationship, you can build a friendship. And people like to do business with people they like. No one wants to listen to or work with that pushy used car salesman. So I learned to be myself, to tell others who I am, my background, and what I do, essentially my personal elevator speech. But the true key is to then focus the conversation on them, their drivers, their motivators, their goals, their pain points. But don't go into it with a goal of addressing each of their concerns as they speak them. If appropriate, at the end of the conversation, build the relationship and welcome the opportunity to learn more over a cup of coffee or even lunch. Remember, people tend to buy, myself included, from people that they know, they trust, and they like. Get prospective customers to know you and build their ongoing trust by then following through with quality services and solutions.
That's good advice, Steve, but that's not typically how technology services are sold. Most people lead with features and benefits.
I know leading with features and benefits is the traditional approach, but I also believe that's why many startups struggle to get initial contracts in place. Being genuine and building a strong relationship first makes you become a person, not a commodity. You may not land the contract in that first discussion, but they will certainly think of you when a challenge matching your skill sets arises.
And Steve, what has been surprisingly hard as you've grown your business?
Most definitely letting go, delegating, allowing others to take over and run part of the business, the show. I've gotten a whole lot better at it over the years, but it's still something I struggle with all the time.
Steve, we need to take a break. We're talking to Steve Edwards, founder of Edwards Performance Solutions. When we return, we'll talk about why letting go is so hard. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This Growth Masters Federal presentation is hosted by Shirley Collier, President and founder of Scale to Market. Scale to Market helps businesses think, plan, collaborate, and build market value by developing and executing customized, data-driven business development playbooks, building efficient information systems, and creating high-performing BD teams. Utilizing the proprietary Davy Business Development Growth Framework, Scale to Market partners with business owners and executives to increase their company's value by achieving profitable and sustainable growth in the federal marketplace. Email Shirley at scollier@scaletomarket.com to obtain your copy of the Davy Growth Framework. Scale to Market now has available the Entrepreneur's Playbook. Priced and scaled for federal contractors with less than 20 employees or $2 million in federal revenues, the Entrepreneur's Playbook is a business development plan of action focusing on those key activities necessary for small businesses to win federal contracts. Learn more about the Entrepreneur's Playbook and other solutions scaled to your company's size and objectives at the Scale to Market website. And now back to Shirley's discussion with Steve Edwards, founder of Edwards Performance Solutions, on his 23-year journey to build and grow his GovCon business.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about delegating. Why do you think this is so hard, Steve?
Well, it's not from lack of trust, because I tend to trust people implicitly until proven otherwise. However, I am highly detail-oriented and grew up with a mindset of if you want it done right, do it yourself. And as wrong as I know that mindset is, it tends to be my initial reaction. I will, if left alone, tend to tinker with something to take it from 97% perfect to 98 or 99%, which sometimes takes twice as long as it took to get to the original 97%.
That's the trait of a good engineer, though.
You're right, and I still do it. The detail and logic in which I approach everything has that engineering signature on it. I believe that is also why the company did so well early on. The support we provided, as well as the training materials and instruction we delivered, were far superior to what any other company of any size were providing at the time. I have gotten a whole lot better at delegating and trusting the processes we have in place, thanks to my wife and the fantastic leadership team we have at the company.
So how did your wife and other leaders at the company convince you to let go? I'm sure there are members of our audience who would like to know exactly how that happens.
You know, it doesn't happen overnight or even within a few weeks or months. It takes time. But knowing you have surrounded yourself with those people that you trust, and for that reason, be it their skill sets, the advice they give you, or some other reason, helps with that transition. You also need to recognize that trait within yourself and empower those people around you to keep you in check and essentially call you out when you exceed those boundaries.
Steve, this series is about growth and the associated challenges. All companies experience growing pains. What were yours?
Over the past 23 years, there have been many pain points and challenging decisions in the company's growth. I believe that every company, as it grows, will hit plateaus. Can be from hiring your first employee to moving beyond various growth goals, whether it be employee count, revenues, or regulatory requirements. Moving beyond each plateau will present a set of unique challenges. The decisions you make at each of these plateaus chart the company's direction moving forward, and I believe are best summarized by these three options. You can either invest in the company and grow to that next level, achieving the next plateau, divest yourself from the company, and either sell out, shut down, or take on a different role within the company. Or option three is to keep the company at its current level, neither growing nor shrinking, just kind of treading water. Options 1 and 2 are valid considerations, and a strong argument can be made for either. But to me, option 3 is an illusion. You are either growing or shrinking. You can't stay still.
So, what was your decision?
I have chosen at each of these inflection points to invest in the company and grow to that next level. Some of the investments I've made at these inflection points include, as we approach 10 employees, I hired a full-time bookkeeping and administration person, and I set up an advisory board to discuss company strategies and keep me accountable. At 15 employees, I moved myself to full-time overhead to run operations and do business development. We also developed policies and procedures for the company. 25 employees meant putting a full-time operations person in place to allow me to be more strategy-focused. We also built out our business units, developed an employee manual, and expanded our advisory board to include different disciplines. At 50 employees is when you really start to get a lot of help from your friends at the government. So we needed to focus on state and federal regulations and compliance. We also formalized our strategic business units based on market sectors, built more administrative functions to include a CFO, an HR director, a contracts manager, and a business development department, and added corporate-level certifications like CMMI and ISO standards. At 100 employees, we continue building processes, procedures, and structure, making sure to maintain the corporate culture, brand, and enhanced employee programs.
Dave, you mentioned a couple of things that many companies find very hard to do, beginning with selecting leadership and advisory board members.
Well, finding the right people with the proper skill sets can be a challenge in and of itself. And remember, the same team that helped you thrive at 25 employees may not be the best fit to take you to 50 or 100. Assessing and then making the decisions to bring in new levels of leadership and advisement is not only challenging, but can be downright painful. If someone is not ready to grow with the organization, it may be time to bring in someone else with more tenure or provide them with an alternative opportunity. Never burn bridges, but always be open to change for the good of the organization and the good of the individual.
Steve is describing one of the most difficult early decisions faced by founders. In the beginning, you hire your friends, colleagues, and family, but not all of them grow as the company grows. Inevitably, new skills and leadership are needed to take the company to the next level. Recognizing this inflection point early on and managing things like titles, responsibilities, compensation, and equity sharing help ease the impact of these important decisions that are to be made later on. Steve, was there a single decision you made that changed the course of your company?
I think every decision I've made has had an impact on the organization. However, I believe two decisions have led to our continued success and trajectory. One was made early in the company's history, and the other about 7 years ago. Around 1998, I decided to hire W-2 employees instead of 1099s or contractors. This was a game changer and went against the recommendation of many peers. Although it seemed more burdensome to take on additional overhead, such as payroll and benefits, as well as the risk of contract changes and slower work periods, I wanted to ensure a single methodology and defined corporate brand within the industry. This could only be possible through hiring employees to build our corporate reputation. Without this decision, I truly wonder if we would have survived the market changes over the past 23 years.
What do you think you got from employees that could not have been gotten from contractors?
Well, hiring employees provides both you and the employee with a sense of ownership and belonging. It also drives that single methodology instead of Bill's way of doing it or Sue's way of doing it or Bob's way of doing it. You know, my biggest fear early on in the company was having to replace someone on a job and having the new person say, I would have never done it this way, which is why a single corporate methodology was so important.
And Steve, you said there was a second decision?
My second defining decision was hiring our current president and CEO, Gina Bate, in 2012. We first met back in 1999 when I taught a Microsoft project scheduling class at Wang Federal Systems. During that class, she approached me about supporting a DOJ contract, and that conversation began a long-term engagement with DOJ and other companies. Gina and I continued to speak throughout the years as her career progressed at Wang and ultimately, after multiple acquisitions, BAE Systems. She was responsible for a book of business in excess of $120 million with a staff of over 600 people. So when I was ready for a growth investment around that 50-employee plateau, Gina was also searching for a new challenge and joined Edwards. Gina brought skills and knowledge from a large company environment, skills and experience I did not have. Her role allowed me to focus on building new relationships and identifying new markets for corporate growth, while she maintains day-to-day direction, leadership, and performance. Together we work to strategically mature the company and build on our industry recognition, brand, and dynamic solutions.
Steve, I can't tell you how hard this is to achieve. Many founders dream of doing this, but statistically, 80% fail. Noam Wasserman, in his book, The Founder's Dilemma, calls this the king or rich paradigm. Founders have to decide if they can delegate authority and become rich, or do they want to control everything? How did you come to make this pivotal decision, and how did you convince yourself that it was the right thing to do?
Well, again, it was not an overnight transition or decision. The key is having someone in place that you trust implicitly with a business mindset similar to your own. It's extremely difficult to find and requires extensive conversations before you officially make that decision. Gina and I have known each other since 1999, so having a 15-year interview certainly helped.
It does.
I was aware of her ethics, her faith, and her business practices, which let me know she would always do what was right for the employees and the growth of the business, even if it was not exactly how I would have done it.
Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently?
You know, I try not to lament over my decisions. There are certainly a few things that I would have done differently, decisions made sooner or some I would not have made at all. However, every decision I've made had a lesson associated with it. None of us get through life without making mistakes or choices we regret. But the lessons we learn from those choices makes us the people we are today.
I agree. And sometimes it's the only way to learn, as painful as failures are. Do you have any regrets?
Absolutely not. Obviously, over the years, there have been many times, like when I was working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end, where I wish I could have resigned, but I couldn't, so I didn't. Overall, the past 23 years have been a blast, and if given the opportunity, I would do it all over again.
What advice do you have for other small government contractors who wish to grow, create market value, and one day cash out?
You know, there are so many things that I tell people who have that bug to start a company. A few of those include building relationships, because relationships will always lead to opportunities. Another one is know what you and the company do. And even more importantly, know what you and the company do not do. You don't want to say yes to every opportunity. And remember, it is better to decline an opportunity than to take it on and perform poorly. And you don't want to be that anything for a buck type of company. You know the type. They're the ones that when you ask, what does your company do? They kind of lean forward to you and say, well, what do you need? Because if you need it, we do it.
I see this too in many companies in the early stages. And I understand that they are still trying to figure out what the market really needs. But in government contracting, you really need to find something you do well, better than anyone else, and it's valued by the federal government, and stick with it. What other advice do you have, Steve?
Well, a couple more things. When you make mistakes, own up to them with your customer and make it right. We all make mistakes, but how we handle those mistakes speaks volumes about you and your company. Don't be afraid to make decisions for fear of making mistakes, because you will make mistakes, and the key is to learn from them. Understand what you're getting yourself into with starting a business. You will not be an overnight success, and it will take you a lot more time than you could possibly imagine. My general rule of thumb is to tell people to estimate the time they think it will take to build a company, then multiply that number by 6 and add another 60%.
That is so true, Steve. It's a lot harder than you ever expected. That's why I have enormous respect for successful small businesses. When I worked in large corporate environments, I found that they tended to look down upon small businesses. They considered what they were doing the big time. Well, starting and growing a small business is significantly harder than most corporate jobs, and in my opinion, small businesses represent the big time. Any other advice, Steve?
You know, make sure you're having fun. It can't be just about the money, because you're going to work extensive hours and it becomes tedious quickly. But if you have fun along the way and surround yourself with good people, it's totally worth it.
Good advice, and I agree, there is nothing more rewarding. Steve, as we are recording our conversation, the country is in the middle of an unprecedented public health crisis. As a government contractor, what is your company doing, and how would you advise other small contractors during this extraordinary time?
Well, we have been on calls to stay up to date on initiatives to support small businesses and share suggestions to shape legislation. We are heavily involved at the federal, state, and county levels. Community connection is vital and one of the core values at Edwards. Another core value is people are our strength. Luckily, we have robust systems in place with excellent IT support, so our employees are able to continue supporting our customers fairly easily. But with everyone working remote, we have made sure to send regular internal communications, sharing not only COVID-19 updates, but positive news like recent wins. We've also set up a team site for better company collaboration and offer a 15-minute morning physical and mental health check via Skype, led by one of our PMs, who is also a health and fitness coach. Finding new ways to remind employees they are not on an island has really helped with morale. We've also adopted this approach in our social media presence. For other contractors, I would say stay the course and get involved where you can, and stay informed. There are webinars and press releases being shared by state and local agencies as well as state and county chambers of commerce. Make sure your information comes from a reliable source. Find new ways to communicate, and we will all come through this stronger.
Thank you, Steve. And the message that I am conveying to small contractors is that our country needs you now more than ever. The federal government needs the ingenuity, flexibility, and determination that I see every day in small businesses. Don't retreat, advance, move forward. There is no better time. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey.
Thank you for having me, Shirley. I thoroughly enjoyed sharing my history and hope my experiences can help to guide existing and future business leaders.
Well, you certainly have, Steve, and it has been my pleasure to talk to you today. This is Shirley Collier, President and founder of Scale to Market and host of the Growth Masters Federal Podcast, signing off for now. As we close, I want to thank you for joining us today and encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. On the Scale to Market website, you'll find our library of podcasts and webcasts, my blog, white papers, links, and other resources to help you operate and grow your business. While there, please leave us a comment or suggestion so we can stay focused on what's important to you.